Hello Wolfpack, we're back again with another video featuring Villain versus Rotten Character series. Today, as I posted, we will be doing the original Planet of the Apes franchise, where we will focus on the villain character of Dr. Hasslein and the rotten character of Governor Breck. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe down below. Our first character is the villain of Dr. Hasslein from Escape of the Planet of the Apes. Many, including myself, consider him to be the best villain character of the Planet of the Apes franchise, both original and rebooted, and there's good reason for this. Hasslein is a scientific genius, as well as a scientific advisor to the president in this movie, where Cornelius and Zira, as well as another ape, Milo, who was killed early on, they have come back in Colonel Taylor's spaceship back in time to 1973, and they have appeared in the United States, in San Francisco. Zira and Cornelius are taken to the local zoo, where Zira eventually reveals, against better advice, their ability to speak and reason to their handlers, two veterinarian doctors. And there is a committee that is held to discuss these visiting apes from the president. And so Zira reveals that she can speak, and Cornelius backs her up, and they give the committee a lot of information. Hasslein is on the committee, and when they reveal how their fellow ape, Dr. Milo, who has died, how he half understood the ship and the idea of how they came back in time, Dr. Hasslein, everybody else is speechless and they don't believe it, and they're like, this couldn't have been. He's the only one who says, no, it's the only thing that makes sense. But even though Cornelius and Zira are being very forthcoming, they're also holding a lot back. For example, Zira holds back the fact that even as an animal psychologist, she had done experiments on live humans, and she holds that back, which we can see Dr. Hasslein catches. We can see it on his face that he catches that she catches herself. And Cornelius and Zira also, when they are asked about Colonel Taylor, they say, we don't know who he was. Was he a soldier? So they're holding back on some information, as well as the idea of Earth's destruction, that the apes and the humans that were still there were fighting each other in a war, and that they came back into the past. But they don't reveal that Earth was destroyed because of this war. We see Dr. Hasslein on TV being interviewed, asking about how this time travel worked, and he gives a very good explanation that I will not go into. Please go and watch the movie if you want to understand it. And we see Cornelius and Zira settling into life as kind of celebrities, where they're given a hotel room. They are met by dignitaries and newspaper people. They are given lots of gifts, taken on excursions. One excursion, Zira goes on with Dr. Hasslein into a local museum, where at one point she actually collapses. And at first they think that she's in shock over seeing something, but she says, no, I'm pregnant. Hasslein takes her back to the hotel room, where she proceeds to get a little bit drunk. And Hasslein, unbeknownst to her, has a recording device where it records her revealing Earth's destruction because of this war between the apes and humans. And he takes this to the president. And the president says, well, I have this information. What do you want me to do with it? And the Hasslein's like, well, we need to take care of this threat. We know that in the distant future, apes will dominate humans, and it will lead to the destruction of our Earth. And the president's like, well, These two seem to be very charming beings, very forthcoming, very good. That maybe they've committed crimes in their old world, but do we consider them crimes against animals here? And Hasslein is like, well, we need to take care of, we need to do something. And the president says, well, you would have us kill these people, including the unborn child, and Hasslein, and by doing so, we would negate the threat to humanity in the distant future. And Hasslein's like, yes, absolutely. And then the president says, and you also believe that if we did this, we have the right to do so, that we do have this right to do so, like the Hitler question of if we could have killed Hitler in the womb or strangled him in his crib, that we would have the right to do so to change the future. And this is where Hasslein, we see on his face and his expression and his demeanor, we see that he's completely doubting himself. He's like, I don't know if we have that right. I just don't know. And so the president, he says, listen, I will give you the authority to go and take these two for interrogation using different methods, not using the committees. And with your findings to the committee, after they've discussed it, I will go by their ruling. I will stand by it. And so Hasslein, with this new authority, takes Cornelius and Zira to an army base and basically keeps them there as prisoners while they interrogate them using, they don't use violence or anything like that, but they do use what we would call police interrogation methods of the time, which is that there's two agents with Hasslein. One plays the good cop, you could say, while the other plays the bad cop, where he continually insults Cornelius and Zira, calling them monkeys, which Cornelius does not take kindly. And Hasslein asks them, well, tell us then, if you can give us more information about why humans were dominated by apes, tell us how that happened. And so Cornelius goes into this story of how a plague hit animals in the human world, their pets, dogs and cats, and destroyed them, and that humans needed pets. They might kill each other, but they won't kill their pets. So they brought in primitive apes. And after generations of having them as pets, teaching them tricks, they figured out that they could get them to perform services. And so they went from being pets to being slaves. Until one ape stood up and said in a clear voice, no. And after that story, Hasslein brings Zira to another room with the doctor, their handler, and they give her a medicine that is basically like a truth serum, or it allows her to speak more truthfully, you could say. And she does reveal how she did vivisections, how she experimented on humans, how the gorillas would use humans as target practice, and that the war between humans and apes did lead to the destruction of Earth, it appears. So Hasslein takes his findings to the committee, where we see the committee finally discussing what they're going to do with this information. They declare that although Zira had done experiments on humans, the fact that humans were considered dumb animals and could not articulate, it was no different than what humans were doing to animals in their timeline. Therefore, she was not guilty of any kind of crime. And Cornelius was simply a scholarly being, very much like Dr. Hasslein in that sense, a scholar. However, the threat to humankind need be prevented by the termination of the pregnancy and making Zira and Cornelius unable to bear any other children. And you can see the smile just completely appear on Hasslein's face. It is so sinister, while at the same time you can totally see the human side of him. It's a strange combination. So Zira and Cornelius, are now in danger, and they know it. And when one Marine comes in with a plate of food for Zira, he accidentally calls their baby a little monkey, and Cornelius upends the tray in his hand and knocks him down, inadvertently killing him because the man hits his head. So he and Zira flee the prison. At the same time, their handler, the doctor, he talks with Hasslein, and he tells Hasslein, you want to see the baby dead? And Hasslein's like, yes. And he's like, and you would see their parents dead too? Yes, I would. It's just totally calm. Totally calm. And Hasslein is like, hey, there is a threat to the human race, and my conscience is clear. We cannot allow the human race to be dominated and the earth to be destroyed. He's much more philosophical about it than I can really articulate, but you can see that he truly believes what he's doing is in the best interest of mankind. But then they now learn that Cornelius and Zira have not only escaped, but have killed a guard. And so Hasslein tells them, see, they've killed, and for that they must be killed. Zira and Cornelius get help from their doctor friends, and they take them to a nearby circus where the owner has a ape there who has also had a child, and Zira gives birth in the circus, basically. And she ends up switching the babies. That comes in handy later on. But we learn that Hasslein is going to have every circus and zoo searched for Zira, Cornelius, and the baby. So Cornelius and Zira are forced to hide out in an abandoned shipyard. But Zira makes a mistake of hiding her suitcase in a nearby area. We see Hasslein on the phone with the president, where the president's like, hey, remember, we still have laws here. We don't go killing people that have not been properly tried for a crime. So they don't know if they were part of the killing of the guard, or even if they were, how it happened. So he's basically telling Hasslein to hold back, to not do anything rash, to follow the laws. But Hasslein, once it's discovered where the suitcase Zira left behind, where it's been found, he realizes they must be in the shipyard. So he takes a pistol, goes into the ship by himself, where he finds Zira and the baby. After a short pursuit, he tells Zira, if you don't give me that baby, I'll shoot. She turns to run. He fires, hits her in the back, follows her out as she falls and drops the baby, and he shoots twice into the baby, killing it. And then a bunch of soldiers have appeared on the dock of the shipyard, and that's when Cornelius, who has a gun of his own now, he shoots Hasslein and kills him. But that gets the soldiers to fire at Cornelius, killing him. And so Zira and Cornelius and the baby ape that she had switched all die right there. Hasslein is a very fascinating villain because you can see his reasoning, his belief, and that he's not an evil man. He isn't cruel for cruelty's sake. He doesn't seem to enjoy what he's doing. For him, it's very matter of fact, this needs to be done, and we need to do it now. Not to mention, it's an easy fix to get rid of this threat to humanity as he sees it. All you have to do is get rid of these three beings that aren't humans and are potentially a threat to the human race. So he truly believes in what he's doing in the end, even if he had doubts in the beginning. A very fascinating man and very fascinating villain. A rotten character of Governor Breck, who comes into Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, the movie after we had Dr. Hasslein. And we see grown-up baby Caesar, the son of Cornelius and Zira. And he's been living in the circus with Armando, who kept him safe, but also kept him away from the cities, where we learned that this is 1993, 20 years after Zira and Cornelius were killed, and that somehow the timeline has sped up in a way, because cats and dogs, a plague did hit them, it did destroy them, and humans brought in apes as pets and eventually made them slaves over less than 20 years, which doesn't make sense, but whatever. Governor Breck is in charge of the area that Armando is now visiting with Caesar, where Caesar sees firsthand how apes are being treated as slaves. Very horribly. At one point, there's a group of humans beating on an ape who is in chains, and Caesar accidentally lets out lousy human bastards. And the human guards confront Armando and his ape, Caesar, and they demand that he say the words, and he does. He says, "Lousy human bastards." Then the chained ape starts getting animated again, and so Caesar slips away and Armando follows him. But because of this, Armando is very worried that the authorities are going to look for them both now. So he has a plan. He tells Caesar, "I'm going to go to the authorities and tell them that you ran away from me because you've never been in the city, and that I did yell lousy inhuman bastards. I will do that, and I should be back in a couple hours. If I'm not, I want you to get rid of your clothes, go hide among the ape cargoes that come in, ape slaves that are coming in from outside the U.S., and hide among them until I can find you." And that's when we see Governor Breck for the first time, where he's asking Armando very pointed questions, very invasive questions about Caesar. And Armando's trying to go along with his own lie. And Breck is really pressing him about how if there was ever an ape that could speak, it would mean the end of human civilization. And has your ape ever spoken to you? And wasn't your circus searched 20 years ago by the authorities? And Armando is trying to play things off. He's also trying to act like he's a proud circus owner. But we also see that Breck, when he mentions that there's been a growing increase in unrest among the apes, his aide, McDonald, is telling him, well, actually, don't we also have productivity up? And also the one ape that physically assaulted his own master, he was covered in bruises and beatings, which Breck says he physically assaulted his own master, but it must have been after a horrible beating, which he no doubt richly deserved. You can hear the venom in Breck's voice. You can hear the fear and paranoia, and you can feel the hate coming off of him through the TV. And he tells Armando, "You're going to remain with us, and we'll hope your ape appears." And Caesar, during this time, is seeing how slavery is, how reconditioning works, which is where these apes are brought in to be taught how to do tasks like mopping, sweeping, getting used to fire, so many other things, as well as breeding. And Caesar, being as smart as he is, he flies through everything without a real problem. But then he's put up for auction, and Breck and his entourage are there. They see how Caesar acts and that he actually gives the shackles back to his guard when he drops them. So they buy him. At first, it seems like Caesar's totally intelligent, but then he pretends to make a mistake while serving a drink to Breck, which Breck laughs off and says, "I guess he's not as smart as we thought he was." And we see that Breck has plans for what he considers the quote-unquote core of the ape problem, which he won't share with his other aide, McDonald, who is supposed to be like his right hand or something. And he calls it an Achilles list. He's been keeping tabs on every instance of ape unrest, every minor infraction, every moment that seems like apes are turning on their humans. And he has Caesar assigned to McDonald to deal with, that they will recondition him themselves because he says, hey, if we sent every ape that messed up an assignment to reconditioning, it would overwhelm the system. And obviously Caesar hears this and understands this. But we see how Breck has his two subordinates, Cope and another guy, interrogate Armando over and over and over until finally they are given permission to use a device that they're not supposed to use, that there's no legal allowance for to use on humans. But they use it to get the truth out of Armando, but he refuses. He absolutely refuses. And at one point he's trying to fight the guard, and then he jumps on a window, goes through the glass, and falls to his death. And Breck is furious at this, that he must have known we were getting to the truth. That's why he killed himself, because he didn't want us finding out. And this is where Caesar starts planning a rebellion, now that he knows that Armando is gone. And more apes are messing up and breaking things and ignoring their humans or outright defying them, which is sending them to reconditioning all the time. And Breck is livid at all this. He's saying, I want every ape on this Achilles list to be rounded up and sent and brought in. And McDonald's telling him, you'll only exasperate the problem. I oppose this in the strictest possible terms. And Breck's like, that is duly noted, Mr. McDonald. And so finally, Cope, the subordinate that interrogated Armando, he figures out that Caesar was among a shipment of orangutans from Borneo. And he says, hey, there are no apes in Borneo, no chimps in Borneo. So he reasons that Caesar had hidden among them. And that Breck is like, I can't believe it. He was hiding under our very noses this whole time. And so eventually Caesar reveals himself to McDonald because he can see McDonald's a good man. But he says most humans won't be kind unless we force them to. And so we must through revolution. And McDonald lets Caesar go. But eventually he's caught. He's brought into a reconditioning room where they hook him up to this electronic table where they can shock him. Governor Breck, Cope, and McDonald are there. And they give the order to electrocute him until he speaks. They tell him to talk. And finally, Caesar's like, have pity, please. And Breck says, we don't need to hear him say anything more. It's not his fault he was born as he was. But it's like looking at a bottled up bacilli, knowing you finally have it caught. And he gives the order for his execution, which the guard says, hey, the vet isn't here right now for the injection. But Cope says, hey, he's already hooked up for electrocution. Just electrocute him to death. McDonald, meanwhile, has gone away, and he managed to find where the power was. And just before they electrocute Caesar, he turns it off. But Caesar realizes it's not working, but pretends that he's being electrocuted and dies. Breck leaves, says to McDonald, can we get back to work now? But Caesar's not dead, obviously. He kills the guard, escapes, and starts leading the rebellion at that point. And Breck and the police Breck summons out the police, he summons out the units, he declares a curfew for the humans, and he tells them, crush them at all costs. Don't let them into the city. But showing great ingenuity, great bravery, and recklessness, the apes break through the different cordons of police, with suffering casualties along the way, but inflicting a lot on the police. And at one point, Breck he gives the order, I want everything used against them, including lethal force. We see the panic setting in for Breck. The panic, the paranoia, the fear. Until finally the apes break to his headquarters, where they start to burn down the door using welding tools. At that point, a bunch of the apes in headquarters are starting to rebel. And Breck grabs a pistol and shoots one of them in the face, and then orders his guards to shoot the rest of them, shoot them all. And when he sees the door being torched down, he gives this big monologue about how they don't have the intelligence for this. They're inferior. If we don't stop them now, this will be a planet of the apes, and we've proven ourselves inferior. And then the door breaks down. There's shooting going on. Breck ducks. A lot of the humans are killed. McDonald is spared by Caesar, but they capture Breck alive. And when he sees Caesar, he's like, how? How are you alive? And then Caesar asks Breck, how are we so different from the cats and dogs you kept as pets? Why did you make us slaves? And Breck says, your kind were once our ancestors. And inside every man is the curled up ape, yearning to come out, the beast that must be whipped into submission. When we hate you, Caesar, we're hating the dark side of ourselves. And in the better version of the movie, the uncut version, Breck is pulled out in chains. And after a huge speech by Caesar about this now being a planet of the apes, Breck is beaten to death by the apes. So Breck is an absolute horrible, rotten character. He is consumed by his fear, paranoia, and a hatred of the apes. For him, keeping them down, keeping them as slaves, and making sure they never, ever have a chance at becoming dominant is everything to him. He says they represent the worst of humanity, while he himself is doing the worst of humanity against them. Anything that comes to him, any information that comes to him showing that they're being docile, that they are these inferior beings, and that they deserve to be where they are, he always welcomes that kind of information at every point. Like when Caesar messes up, he says, fell's not so bright as we thought. I guess I need to have you name yourself the way my wife did. Can't believe we're doing it, but okay. And that when the idea that ape intelligence has gone up by statistics, he confronts McDonald with this. See, this proves that they're starting to catch on, aren't they? And McDonald's like, well, it actually also shows that productivity has gone up, and I thought that would be a good thing for us. And Breck also, so he welcomes any information that reinforces his beliefs and his actions. Anything that contradicts that, he rejects out of hand. He doesn't even consider it. Not once. He believes apes inferior and that they must stay that way. And that using violence and coercion and any means that we consider the worst of humanity is absolutely fine against the apes. And against any human that sympathizes with them. It is expected that you do everything you can to keep them down through violence, coercion, torture, everything. Everything bad about humanity you can do to apes and should, in Breck's mind. So he's an absolutely rotten, rotten man. Achieved becoming a governor through these kind of methods against apes and humans. So he is the epitome of what you would consider a fascist, racist, however you want to call it. But, as I said, the worst of humanity in power. I would call him what we would say is a human supremacist against the apes. Absolutely rotten character when you compare him to somebody like Dr. Hasslein, who simply believes he's doing what he has to do to protect humanity, whereas Breck believes he's doing the same thing, but also seems to enjoy inflicting this horror and terror on the apes. And that it's a horrible fear for him that the apes might somehow be dominating over humans. So that is my video for today. I know it stretched on for quite a while, but there was a lot to talk about in this one because the Planet of the Apes franchise originally was one of the best franchises ever made, in my opinion. So thank you for listening, my wolf pack, and looking forward to seeing you for one more villain versus rotten characters video. Take care.